Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. I know it's the end of the day. I'm probably between you and a beer, you and dinner, you and something, maybe going home. But anyway, thanks for joining. So wanted to talk today about tokenization. And I know it's an overused term, largely, but what are we doing at Hedera to bring real-world assets on-chain? So blockchain, probably obvious, it's not a buzzword anymore. It is something that many, many organizations are starting to use. We are unique in that we're a distributed ledger technology, which affords us a few things that are pretty important that I'll talk about towards the end, but I'll just mention and highlight here. One is we're incredibly secure. We've got incredible scale, and then all of our transaction fees are denominated and fixed to the US dollar, which we don't worry about congestion and fluctuating gas fees, et cetera. You know, if you're building on top of Hedera, what your costs are going to be based on the demand and utilization of the application that you're using. So as you think about, we believe that, DLT is an advantage for many organizations that are building. And so we're going to talk specifically about real use cases solving real problems on-chain today. On-chain is the new online. So as we think about what does that really mean in bringing things on-chain, there are a set of different technologies, set of different analytics, but at the end of the day, everything remains, how am I growing revenue and market share, or how am I reducing costs and speeding up the way that I do business? So this is one, Aberdeen. Aberdeen is a large hedge fund, $500 billion of assets under management based out of the UK that have tokenized their money market fund. Now, why are they doing this? A lot of tokenization projects are based on democratizing what they're doing to fractionalize and give other investors, besides the large institutions, an opportunity to participate. That's certainly one of the reasons that they did this. So they not only tokenized their money market fund, but they tokenized the assets in the fund, and then they put them on a regulated exchange called Archax, which has a multiple amount of capabilities. One, tokenization, it happens to be an exchange, and it's a custodian, so that brokers and investors can access their technology and specifically the securities and the assets that are running on Hedera. So this helps with price discovery. So if you're a large institution, the benefit to you is that you've got transparent pricing so that when you can determine when and how you want to make that trade. A lot of liquidity, a lot of capabilities for both the small investor, private investor, who typically doesn't have the ability to write the same check size that larger institutions have. And so this idea of privileged access that the larger institutions have held on to is no longer the case with something that Aberdeen is doing. Their vision not only is the money market fund, but to tokenize their real estate assets as well, along with bonds. And so we're seeing more and more of these types of use cases running on the network. The second is our stablecoin studio. So at Token 2049 in Singapore, we announced Stablecoin Studio. There are multiple organizations that are building stablecoins. We wanted to make it really, really easy to do that. And so we built an SDK and a command line interface, or a CLI, to be able to do that, for you to mint, create, pause, and manage all of the stablecoins that are on the network. There's some uniqueness to what we're doing here besides just building out an SDK. And so to illustrate that, I want to talk about another use case. So Shinhan Bank, with a Korean-backed stablecoin, has built and tokenized this on Hedera. So and it was really for international remittance. And so some of the things that they were trying to challenge currently, slow processing times, the transaction fees were expensive. I've got a summary slide that shows that the transaction fees are $30 plus per transaction. And when you're talking about the number of transactions and billions of dollars, that's a lot of money. Limited hours of operation, it only was Monday through Friday. Lack of system standardization, cost of integration. It was a $50 billion global market that needed a better solution. So what they did was they did a proof of concept leveraging Hedera and Stablecoin Studio to improve processing time, improve the transparency, integrity of the system, ultimately resulting in an optimized experience that reduced processing time from days to minutes. And so when you think about today, settlements happening, trades happening, that takes a lot of resources. It's non-standard systems, and it takes a lot of time, resulting in a ton of money lost and a lot of inefficiency. They leveraged Hedera Stablecoin Studio so that they could get to real-time settlements. FX integration was real-time, along with doing a multi-bank POC, Shinhan Bank, along with a couple of other banks. EVM compatibility. So this is one of the things you may have never heard about Hedera, but we realized that there are other chains that people are building on. And so we needed to become EVM compatible. So if you wanted to issue an ERC20 token, you could do that natively on Hedera. So we're not only EVM compatible, but we have moved towards EVM equivalents. And we should have EVM equivalents in the next 6 months, which we're pretty excited about. 24-hour operation time, so an always-on type of business. So here's some numbers and the achievements. It went from traditional banking hours to 24/7, 1 to 10 days to 2.5 seconds. One of the things about Hedera's technology is finality. And so finality for us is in the 2.5 to 3 second time frame. So when you think about a real-time business, even if it's not high-frequency trading, you still want to be able to have finality in a matter of seconds as opposed to minutes, or the fear that they're going to roll back the transaction. Real-time traceability, it's just simply supported by design. Formerly, settlement happened in USD. Now it doesn't matter. It can happen in whatever token gets remitted. And look at the charges, the fees associated to it. Intermediary fees of 20 to 30 bucks, TTF fees of $0 to $6, transfer fees of anywhere from $3 to $38, and on Hedera, a 5-cent transaction fee for all of this. So when you think about the volume and scale of organizations like Shinhan, just one use case running on Hedera, a fraction of the cost. So how is this going to be applied to other merchant-based settlements, leveraging Visa or MasterCard? So this is a process today that takes 1 to 5 days, also has holidays and restrictions. It's fraught with dependencies, areas that can fail at any point in time. So you go from your consumer bank, some sort of fiat, into Visa, FX provider, into WorldPay FIS, FX provider conversation, along within the merchant bank. So 5 different processes, multiple back and forth conversations. At any point in time, something could go wrong. And oh, by the way, I go to pay with my Visa card to buy gas. The settlement charge, or when that particular vendor gets paid, 1 to 5 days. Well, in a world and in an economy that's always on, how can they reduce that amount of time? So there's nothing wrong if, which means everything's wrong, but there's nothing wrong if each party understands and respects their respective banks and trusts them. There isn't a failure in any of the 5 unique points of failure. Each party's happy with the service level. Hey, I'm happy to get paid 5 days from now, right? How many people, I don't know if we have American Express in the room, but how many people, many merchants don't deal with American Express because of the fee and when they get paid, right? So FX fees, money movement, end-to-end traceability. The merchant doesn't want their money faster, like I just talked about, and the parties don't care about improving status quo. If you've said yes to that, then the older solution is for you. If not, then this is what it needs to look like. We're really trying to innovate the industry and focus on a proof of reserve solution, which is going to enable faster settlement and, most importantly, being able to ensure proof of reserve for any stable coin that gets built on Hedera. So today, if your organization has leveraged or written stable coins, there is no guarantee outside of manual checking that you've got the collateral in whatever account to back the stable coin that you're creating. So FIS WorldPay on Hedera has created a proof of reserve. If you're leveraging the Stablecoin Studio, you can verify before you create N+1 stablecoins that the collateral is in your bank account to improve or to ensure the ratio that you've defined that you've needed, typically 1-to-1. So what's coming next from really trying to rewire card payments? One, you go from your consumer bank, doesn't matter. It was fiat previously, now it can be a stable coin by said institution. Visa or MasterCard, your own wallets, fiat or stable coin, whoever determines to be the issuer, and then leveraging that stable coin into the proof of reserve and the merchant's own wallet. So now this becomes a 4-step process and is verified to ensure faster time to settlement, as well as ensuring that the stablecoin that you've got is backed appropriately by the necessary collateral. So this gives you full transparency for up to 100%, traceability, auditability, all of those things. Speed and efficiency, I'll talk about where's the speed coming from, what is a unique area of Hedera, and why can we be so fast, and real-time and/or streaming settlement, and then the end-to-end settlement, so that we're preparing for, this is not a political comment, but we're preparing for governments, organizations, and various geographies of the world for CBDCs. So next is Drop. Drop is a micropayments platform that was recently listed as a vendor for FedNow to settle transactions. Drop's focus, they've built on Hedera, has typically been micropayments, specializing in transactions under $10. So some of which, you know, there's a lot of transactions that we do day in and day out that are under $10, but they're also trying to shift the paradigm in that, let's say, for example, you want to read a book. And that book is, you know, I don't know, 500 pages long and it's $40. I don't necessarily want to pay for that because I don't know if I'm going to like the book. I know my friend said that the book is incredible, but I don't know if I'm going to like the book. Wouldn't it be cool if you could pay per page? And so what they're doing is they're working with some vendors to implement this kind of pay per use so that maybe 40 pages in, I can decide, yeah, you know what, it's worth $40. Now I'll buy it, but I've only spent $5 to get there. FedNow is, you know, allowing them to use them as a service provider for the speed, for the micropayments, and they're really trying to upend, whether you're using USDC, whether you're using USD, whether you're using the native token of HBAR, or native token of Hedera, which is HBAR, having multiple ways to engage with this unique technology. So payment providers, pay as a bank, you know, including calling their API, there are multiple ways to work with companies like Drop. So let me talk briefly about Hedera. So Hedera is a publicly permissioned blockchain. We are governed by some of the largest institutions in the world. I'll talk about those institutions on the next slide, but our performance is not theoretical. Our performance is 10,000 plus TPS today. If you went to hederatransactions.com, HederaTXNS.com, you'll see the real-time transactions on the network, which right now are around 2,200 transactions per second. We've done almost 26.5 billion transactions on the network. These are consensus transactions. These aren't voting transactions. These are real-world payload transactions on the network from the real-world use cases, some of which I talked about here today. Finality in seconds, EVM compatibility. Security. It's not leader-based, so there's no risk of denial of service attacks. It's a proof-of-stake network, so we've got a native token called HBAR. There have been 50 billion HBAR tokens minted. Stability, there's been no forking of the network. So one of the things, and I want to address this because had you heard about Hedera in the past, you might be thinking, Hedera's closed source. As of August of 2 years ago, Hedera was completely open source. Originally, when Hedera was created, the consensus mechanism, the algorithm, was patented and closed source. Everything else above that was open review. Since then, it's been, because there's no risk of forking any longer, it's been completely open source down to the consensus algorithm. Everything's posted in GitHub as a repo. And then pricing is stable. So rather than fluctuating gas fees and concern, like I said, denominated and fixed to the US dollar. Governance, node operations, network features, treasury management. I'll talk about that on the next slide. You'll recognize many of the companies that are governing and running nodes of this network. And this sustainability. We have the lowest footprint of any network on the market. In fact, per transaction, we're 0.603 kilowatts per hour versus we're 1,000 times more efficient than the Visa network in how we run. So our governing council, and this makes us really unique from other layer ones in that these organizations here are the ones that do a few things. One, they run and operate nodes of the network. They sign the transactions on the network. They manage the treasury. They drive the roadmap, right? And all of that, and they manage, you know, the GitHub repos, et cetera. Why is that important? These are some of the largest multinational companies in the world who are not only building on top of Hedera, but providing this public permission function as to driving what we do next. I mentioned Aberdeen, Boeing, Dell Technologies, just to name a few, Google, FIS, WorldPay, some of the biggest banks, Nomura, Shinhan, Standard, Ubisoft, a gaming company, Wipro, et cetera. They've chosen to not only build on Hedera, but be a part of how Hedera gets managed. And we continue, so today there's 29 of these logos up here. We're looking and driving towards 39, where 39 is, you know, effectively collusion resistant, along with making sure that the HBAR token is out in the market. HBAR is the native token used to pay for the transaction fees on the network. So we've got 3 transaction types. The consensus service transaction, which costs 1/1000th of a penny. So every time you make a consensus call to validate consensus, write it to the distributed ledger, that's 1/1000th of a penny. The token service, a token can be anything. That's the native service on us. That's 1/10th of a penny. And then the smart contract service, typically around $1 to mint a smart contract and call a smart contract. All of that is built on the hash graph consensus layer and all of the necessary application use cases. Now, what we at the HBAR Foundation have done is, I'm not Hedera proper, I'm not the network, that's the governing council. I am the foundation that is responsible for building the ecosystem around Hedera. And so 2.5 years ago, what we did was we focused on aligning ourselves to key market areas, and so we created 4 funds. The first fund was the Crypto Economy Fund, focused on supporting wallets, exchanges, custodians, and the like. The second was our Consumer Engagement Fund, focused on brands connecting with their consumers in Web3 unique ways. And this is sports, media, entertainment area, some of the largest brands in the world. Then our third area was the Sustainable Impact Fund, where many organizations are driving towards ESG goals that they have. How can they achieve them? How can they ensure the transparency for the carbon credits, carbon offsets that they buy? We have one of our governing council members that has created something called atma.io, atma.io, which is the Connected Products Cloud. This is tracking and tracing all of the products for their customers in terms of how they get created and what was the carbon footprint in creating that good or service. And then they can go buy carbon offsets to make sure that creating, you know, let's say it's an apparel company, creating that shirt, that blouse, that pair of pants, that shoe was absolutely something that did not have an impact on the planet. This is happening more and more and resulting in billions and billions of IoT devices being tracked and traced as a result of that. So the final area is payments and fintech, where we've got several organizations, some of which I've mentioned here, focusing on tokenizing their assets. A lot of people think about tokenization as just an NFT. It's more than an NFT when we think about settlement, we think about cross-border transactions, or we think about ticketing. We've got organizations that are looking at how do they modernize ticketing to ensure that if I go buy a ticket, and let me give you an example. StubHub today, if I go buy a ticket on StubHub, that person who I buy it from may have bought the ticket from the team, the concert vendor, whoever it is, and they're a broker and they're now selling it on StubHub at a premium. Well, that whoever the originator of that ticket was doesn't share in the secondary revenue created by StubHub. Well, in a world where a ticket becomes an NFT and that NFT minter can now determine, I want a 10% royalty every time this changes hands, that changes the game for a lot of these industries, sports, media, entertainment in particular. Moreover, if I'm now an NFT holder of a ticket and I go to a game, a venue, etc., now that person knows how much beer I bought, how many hot dogs I bought, did I bring my family? And so now all of a sudden, while they may not know me specifically, they know patterns of behavior and they can determine, hey, you know what, let me give this person rewards. They've been to 11 games this season and, you know, they've spent this amount of money. So it changes the game in terms of consumer engagement. We're excited about this area for us. So with that, that is Hedera. Those are some of the use cases that we've got live on the network. And I think I am almost at time. If there's a couple of questions, I think I have like 3 minutes for questions. Question. The question is, we did something with Huntington Bank from a loan perspective, and are we looking to do more loans? The answer is we're looking at whatever sort of asset that can run on the network. That was just one example. So the answer is yes. If they can put it on Hedera, tokenize it, do that in a way that would be scalable, we're happy to have conversations like that. Any other questions? Okay, great. Thanks for your time.